So it's been 3 years since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, but in the last few weeks there has been a growing impetus to try and put an end to that war. Ever since the election of new US President Donald Trump, there has been the first high-level contact between Russia and the United States in more than 3 years since this war began. What role can India play? After all, the Prime Minister has said 2 years ago that this is not the era of war, this is the era of peace. As a neutral arbiter, can India play a role in bringing this war to a conclusion? Joining me now is a very special guest here on CNN News 18. His Excellency Denis Alipov is the Ambassador of Russia to India. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start off by asking you, clearly there's a lot of impetus now and I would say urgency to try and find a solution to the war ever since Mr. Trump became President of the United States. In this geopolitical landscape, how do you see India-Russia ties playing itself out?
Well, I would say that our bilateral relations with India have been very consistent, very stable, very enduring at any periods of time since the Indian independence. Ideally, we would like to have our relations immune to external factors, especially negative external factors. But we of course live and cooperate not in a bubble. If we speak about the current stage, the anti-Russia sanctions, which I would like to point out are illegitimate in nature. A full-fledged economic war unleashed against us, 20,000 sanctions, an unprecedented number. So they incidentally have an impact on the Russia-India trade, not the opposite impact, not the one that was intended. Mm-hmm. We have reached the 66 billion of USD in trade last year. It has increased manifold, mainly due to Russian exports of oil, but not only. We have substantially increased the supplies of fertilizers, agricultural products, coal, petrochemical products. The Indian exports to Russia are also growing, have grown by 23% last year by 11 months of last year. We are very optimistic about the perspectives. We're looking forward to an early start of negotiations on a free trade agreement between India and the Eurasian Economic Union that would be beneficial for the process, for the expansion of bilateral trade and the economic relations. And of course, trade is only part of the relationship, of the cooperation. We have been the only country that practically implements the construction of a nuclear power plant in India. The cooperation in nuclear energy has been very beneficial to both our countries, and have been very candid and extensive. We're looking forward to the expansion of construction in the Indian soil, including the smaller modular reactors, not only big power plants. We are in dialogue on non-energy application of nuclear technologies. Of course, the defense cooperation is there, very instrumental to the security of this country. The educational contacts in education, in joint research programs, including artificial intelligence, quantum computing. So this has all taken place and is ongoing, and I would say that we should not bet on the time when the sanctions would go. They may
take some more time.
Go sometime in the future, they may not. We should adjust ourselves to the current realities. There are ways to proceed, and we are very hopeful and looking forward to the progress.
I do want to ask you, Ambassador, there was the first ever recently, the high-level meetings that happened between the United States and Russia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he met with your foreign minister, Mr. Sergei Lavrov, in Riyadh. I believe there are further meetings happening in Turkey this week. What is the state that you can tell our viewers about how soon we can see a settlement to this war, what the parameters or conditions might be as to how we see the end of this war, and what does India take away from this rapprochement between Russia and the United States?
My take is that this process would be very cautious on both ends, and would probably not be very quick. But it is a good development, a positive development that we see on the part of the Trump administration, that it is prepared not only to listen but to hear, and is prepared to sit and talk on the basis of mutual respect and talk about the solution that would be beneficial to both ways, would bring the peace process closer, peace process in Europe closer. We are now have just started. Ukraine issue is not the only one. We have said that we need to first re-establish the direct contacts between Russia and the US. And this is the very thing that we are focused on now. We need to ensure the full-fledged, smooth operations of the embassies in both countries, so that the dialogue is maintained on a constant basis. And of course, in due course, we will focus on the peaceful solution for the crisis in Europe.
Prime Minister Modi famously a couple of years back had told President Putin on the sidelines of an SCO summit that this is not the era of war, it's the era of peace. Given that Prime Minister Modi and India are one of the few countries in the world right now that have good equations both with Russia as well as with Ukraine, and Prime Minister visited both Moscow and Kiev just in the last year, do you see any kind of role that India can play as a neutral arbiter in ending this war?
India has been very consistent in its approach, has maintained, as you say, the contacts with all the parties concerned, has shown the goodwill, the positive intention towards the peaceful resolution through diplomatic means, has always called for that. We value that very much. India has indicated that it would be prepared to play a role provided that the parties involved are comfortable and with that, and are willing to engage India more substantially in the peace process. So far it has not come up with some kind of a plan. but has indicated that it is prepared to be helpful. We support that, and at the moment, naturally, we are focused on the dialogue with the US, which is the decisive party apart from us in terms of bringing the peaceful resolution closer into effect.
So over the last 3 years since this conflict began, India also received a lot of flack for its votes in the United Nations, for purchase of Russian oil, so on and so forth. Do you think now that even the United States has come to the conclusion that we need to find a peace, we need to find a just and a durable peace and bring this war to a conclusion, that India's position has been vindicated, that India, the position that it took through these last 3 years, that position has been vindicated by time?
Well, I think this is more a question to the Indian side, but if you ask me, I think that India has done a right thing to, especially not to side with one of the parties.
Correct.
Especially avoiding to side with the belligerent party, which is now represented by Europe.
I want to also, in the previous answer you said, so far there's been no proposal that has come forth from India. If India were to make a proposal for peace, would Russia be open to considering?
We have said that we would be open. Foreign Minister Lavrov publicly said that, and President Putin has also indicated that we are open to consider all serious proposals directed towards peaceful resolution of the conflict. But all these proposals, including the process that we have started with the US, should, of course, address the root causes of the conflict, not just be directed at an immediate ceasefire without without the talks on how to resolve the reasons that are at the base of this conflict. So the peace would come if we are able to find a mutually acceptable solution of those problems, that security problems and other problems that exist around Ukraine and in Europe, the root causes that led to the escalation of the conflict in 2022. The war started for the eastern parts of Ukraine way back in 2014, not in 2022.
Correct.
So the issue is much more complex than it may seem at first glance.
I want to come to the defense part of the relationship. As you know, even now, more than 50% of India's defense equipment comes from Russia. Recently, when Prime Minister was at the White House, there was the offer of selling the F-35, the US fighter jet, the fifth generation fighter jet, to India. The joint statement also mentions co-production of Stryker infantry combat vehicles, Javelin anti-tank missiles, and so on. What do you think would be the fallout? It's very evident that President Trump wants India to buy more American defense equipment. What do you think would be the fallout of that on the India-Russia defense partnership?
India is, of course, free to buy defense equipment and weapons from whatever source there is. Obviously, the US equipment is way more expensive than the equivalent Russian products. The current conflict has shown the very good quality of our products, on which we have substantially improved. A much less expensive, much more cheap equivalent equipment, including aircraft, including unmanned aerial vehicles, and many other. I think India is more keen, and actually this is the gist of the Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India programs, to create its own defense production, so that the equipment is manufactured within the country, and for that to happen, we and India in the first place is willing to cooperate with all its main partners, Russia included. Correct. What is the worrying factor and an unwelcome factor is that the US wants India to stop its defense relationship with India for the benefit of the US-India ties in defense. This is, an indication of an unfair competition. But generally, the Indian market is very competitive. We're prepared for that competition. Actually, we were the first, even before the Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India were launched, initiated the co-production, the technology transfer with India. The BrahMos missiles is the case in point, but not only the Su-30 MKIs, tanks. We are early starters. We are very extensively present in this market. We are willing to continue. We're prepared to do that. We are prepared to compete. I think we have a very good basis and strong positions in the Indian market to continue.
I do want to ask you, when is President Putin coming to India? There were reports last year, I think he would likely come in the first quarter of this year. Is there anything that you can confirm to us about that? And also, there was a story yesterday that came out in the Russian news agency that Prime Minister Modi is going to be there for the Victory Day in May, but the MEA is denying that. So when do we see the next high-level exchange between the President and the Prime Minister?
President Putin was invited to visit India, and the invitation was accepted. We are now in dialogue to identify the suitable dates for this visit. It would be becoming for me to spill the beans at this juncture. The dates will be announced in due course.
But you're looking at
we are now in this discussion to find the suitable schedule for both leaders. As regards the 80th anniversary of the victory in World War II and the celebrations that will take place on May 9th in Moscow, we have invited the high Indian representatives to this ceremony, and we're looking forward to welcoming the Indian representatives, whoever would go in Moscow at the military parade and at the celebrations that we will have.
Has the Indian side told you will the Prime Minister be going, or who will be going representing India?
I would readdress you to the MEA and the Indian government to respond to that.
I want to come back to, again, another crucial part of the India-Russia relationship, which is, of course, energy cooperation, and you mentioned this earlier on. There was a time during the course of the last 3 years where Russia became India's largest supplier of oil. At one point of time, more than 40% of India's oil energy imports was coming from Russia. That has come down in the last few months. Again, the United States under the new Trump administration, and we saw this in the White House visit, intends India to buy more American crude and more American oil. What may that mean for India-Russia cooperation in energy?
I believe that India, the petroleum minister has said that on several occasions. India is looking for the cheapest offer that there is in the market. If you are asking about the direct US supplies to India, I think that would be an unwise decision, because in this case the US supplies would be way more expensive than other alternatives that there are in the market. If the US participates in with offers for the global market, this would probably bring the prices down. But it is a very fluctuating situation always in the oil market. We have so far been offering the cheapest supplies, and have been successful in that. And we are very optimistic about the prospects. Despite the targeted sanctions against the Russian oil and the ships, we are moving towards finding the solution so that the Russian supplies stay in the global market and increase.
I want to come to a long-standing issue between Russia and India, which is on payment mechanism settling in rupee-ruble trade. Again, when can we expect a resolution? And given all the noise that President Trump has been making about BRICS currency, even though there's no talk of introducing a new BRICS currency, do you think that rupee-ruble trade agreement will have a fallout? Because clearly the US wants to promote dollar settlements.
We don't have any issues as regards the rupee-ruble mechanism. The mechanism is working. There are various options how to utilize national currencies bilaterally between us in trade. The BRICS currency that Trump spoke about and you mentioned is something non-existent. We do not discuss this issue within BRICS.
Yeah.
But obviously the sanctions that the West has so extensively introduced against Russia undermine the reliability of the US dollar and euro. And this is something they also have started to pay attention to, especially in the US, not so much in Europe. No wonder that the increasing number of countries have started to promote national currencies as the means of transactions, India included. I think this is a natural process, and it will continue. Bilaterally, we don't have any problems in using the national currencies. What is the factor that the determining factor is the over cautiousness of the Indian banks and the Indian business community to utilize the national currencies in trade with us. But this has also, you know, has been changing gradually, and we see the increase of interest of the Indian business to enter the Russian market.
All right, Ambassador Denis Alipov, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18.
Thank you. Thank you.